Hello. I just got done beating Animal Well today after putting in a good 20 hours into the game. Big Mode Publishing, their first game, developed by Billy Basso, otherwise known as Shared Memory. I think that's a very apt description for the game as well. There's a certain feeling that you get playing the game that kind of feels like you've been in this world before. It's very nostalgia filled. It's eerie, ambient, cozy at times. Some of my favorite things about the game is traversing through a multitude of rooms in the game and have not too much going on. Maybe like a light puzzle here and there that happens traversing through these rooms, and it's just kind of the ambiance and all of the sound effects that go into your little slime boy walking around, hopping, using the bubble wand, the sound effect of the top going, and the slinky when it hits an end point makes that little like, I don't know what kind of a sound you'd describe it as, but I guess it's a slinky sound. And uh, and you just get those nice, cozy, very relaxing, flow statey movement. And then in the next moment, you can get immediately spooked by whatever monstrosity Billy Basso had developed for the game in the next room. It's just like a long pause before the next almost jump scary kind of feeling that you get from the game time to time. And I think it's really cool that this game got the spotlight that it did thanks to Big Mode Publishing. And I feel like that is a much more important discussion to have over over the game itself. That is, it's a fine game. I really do like the game a lot. I put in as many hours as I did trying to find everything in the game. I think I left off with like 50 out of the 60 eggs without looking anything up. I had maybe 10 out of all of the tools in the game by the time I got to the credits scene with the last, after getting through the last boss obstacle, I guess you would call it. Not so much a boss fight as it is just a series of interconnected rooms based off of a puzzle. And unfortunately, from what it looks like at least, I won't be able to 100% this save file unless I get around to doing other stuff, which involves looking at more things within the environment that I still have not discovered yet. There's like a lot to do still, even with 50 out of the 60 eggs they're done with, and 2 out of the 3 secret bunnies discovered. There's still so much to do, and I think I've settled on the game for now. It's not generally my vibe doing a strictly puzzle Metroidvania. I'd say most Metroidvanias in themselves, they're not like something that I have too much experience with overall. But I think the more important discussion is about Big Mode Publishing, Mr. Video Game Donkey and his wife Leah, which you can see their names in the credits of the game too, as testers and feedback givers, as well as publishers, of course. Yeah, what's up with all of these influencers? And excuse me for calling them that, but that's just kind of what they are, right? I got influenced into buying the game in the first place because of Donkey spotlighting the game and giving Billy Basso a platform to show off his creative work to a massive audience. But what's up with all these influencers? You got the Big Mode Gaming, and then not too long afterwards, you had Mad Mushroom by these guys from OTK, and I think Cold Carnage is a co-owner of it now, and now they're developing their own games. We got a couple of them that got shown off pretty recently, and there's a wide variety of like team compositions that are being used to make these games. You know, there's a couple of solo indie devs as well as like teams that are indie as well, making all of these games that now a bunch of these companies that are just popping out of nowhere now are helping publish these games. And and then even on top of OTK's gaming publishing company, now you've got apparently now there's also Ludwig and Pirate Software, who is a game developer himself, and now they're making their own publishing label for games as well. I think it's an interesting discussion to have because it's in the name themselves, influencers, right? When you get somebody like this to help publish your game, that's a real benefactor to have. It might not be a stockholder in a large corporation, or it might not be a first party publisher that has manufacturing rights for their first party hardware consoles. And it's definitely not being an extension of a private company that is practically worth billions nowadays with Steam and Valve. But it's still something, right? Because even so far back as early pandemic days, right, we saw that those numbers were leaked. And I mean, obviously, I feel like most people had an impression of how much streamers made, and these are just streamers on Twitch by itself, right? But when we saw that leak, we saw the numbers and we saw how much people were making. And you kind of get an impression by looking at those numbers and seeing how they treat their stream, their audience, and exactly what type of content or videos they were pumping out at that point. You get an impression of what that person seems to care about. And you didn't really get where somebody like Donkey was coming from when he was coming up with his publishing label, right? You didn't really get to see how much he was making. You can only, guesstimate with stuff like Social Blade and whatnot. But we know just how often somebody like Donkey would probably get demonetized anyway. So it's interesting just to see where he came from with these games. And to me, looking at Animal Well, I feel like to me it always felt like partially it was his type of game, and another part of it is maybe like a much more private like relationship with Billy Basso himself. I get the feeling, just to get off topic for a sec, how real of a name is Billy Basso? That sounds like a made-up donkey name in itself, but it's a real person, and he seems like a cool guy, and I would like to talk to him one day about his game and sort of his main drive for going into this field in game dev. But you see him and you see the type of stuff that Donkey tends to like, and partially I can see how this would be a game that Donkey would be interested in publishing. Another part of it is kind of like, well, does he even really like puzzle games like that? Like that? Brain teasers and getting traversed, getting lost in a giant Metroidvania world. Why did I say traverse in the first? Don't worry about me saying traverse. My mind was scrambled. And then when I look at the stuff that OTK is currently publishing, it's interesting to see the difference. Not in terms of quality, you know. I feel like in both cases, between Big Mode and Mad Mushroom, the quality is there for the games that they are publishing, right? Animal Well here being a prime example. Solo dev with his own game engine, having created basically everything in the game. Like, I mean, he basically did everything himself in that game, and it took him what 5, 6, 7+ years to get through all of that and come up with the puzzle box that people so aptly describe it as made. And the Mad Mushroom, you know, you have things like Atomic Picnic and their new one that they're coming out with, Splody. These are more streamer centric, right? Splody being almost like a Super Meat Boy esque kind of platformer, and with physics as well, you know, to kind of get that impression that it's also sort of like a nice, interesting blend between Super Meat Boy and a game like Jump King, where aiming where you want to traverse to is just as important as getting there as quick and as efficient as you can. I might have been gone off on a tangent a bit here. I think the main point is thinking about how these devs have these benefactors, and how important will these publishing companies be within the industry itself. Companies specifically run by influencers that are co-owned, whether or not they actually play any part in the development of these games, like how Donkey was, being a tester as well as a feedback giver for Animal Well. You know, how much of that will we see in turn for these other influencers that are doing that stuff? And let's not forget that Donkey might not have been the first to have done it, right? Granted, this is probably a much more almost like internet boomer choice here to bring them up. But you have a person like Jesse Cox, who, you know, he had done MMO content for specifically WoW for many, many years. Co-optional podcast. Yes, I was a regular viewer of that, watching their new content right now too. But you know, he published a series of games himself too, like a couple of years back, Monster Prom, with his own with a completely separate independent team that he helped publish, right? But he was more like a producer in that case. So it's interesting to think, because he probably doesn't have his own publishing label, but he's probably one of the first that I've seen, that I know of, that got involved in game dev coming outside of the game dev world as an influencer, coming in to directly influence the development of certain indie games. And in that case, you usually don't even get the impression that he's a part of said game. If somebody finds Monster Prom, you usually don't see the name Jesse Cox attached to it. You usually just see the dev team, right? You usually see the name of the studio, whoever's publishing it, and then the game itself. You don't often hear about Jesse Cox there as the producer. Granted, he will, you know, when he gets the time to do it, he will shill the game. He will promote the game. But it's sort of like a backseat in some ways, where when it comes to somebody like Donkey, we hear so often Donkey made. This is a, you know, Donkey's publishing label making Animal Well. So now the question becomes, are people more involved with the discussion of Donkey publishing Animal Well or Animal Well as a game. And furthermore, will that happen to future games with all of these other influencer owned and ran publishing companies? Does that even help these developers? Do they take these deals? Are developers now going to make games specific to try and appeal to said, publishers? Will we see people try to make Donkey games? Which is weird to think of because he has a wide assortment of tastes. And again, I feel like Animal Well kind of straddles that line between being something that he would thoroughly, genuinely enjoy, or something that he would get bored with pretty easily. It runs that line with its pretty amazing game design, which I can't do it justice by myself. I would want like a panel of people to help me dissect the game design of Animal Well. That is what I would want. I don't want to tackle that by myself. All I'm gonna say is that I absolutely loved it too. But then what about all these other studios, right? With Mad Mushroom, you have Atomic Picnic, Splody, and the more recent game that they showed off. See, now I can't even remember what the heck it's about. But these are all very streamer, Twitch-ish centric genres, right? You have Splody being the almost rage-inducing, but like Super Meat Boy platformer with wonky physics. The Atomic Picnic being a co-op shooter. And then the latest one that they showed off, I think that was, I can't remember if it was an auto battler or if it was like a roguelike. I can't remember. I'd have to look at it again. I'm not going to update this though, but rest assured, most of those are very streamer central. And so it leads me to wonder, what sort of games are Ludwig and Pirate Software going to try and publish? Is it going to go directly onto their channels where they promote said games? Is this another way to get some of their own influencer friends involved in, game development? I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but, Now what happens when the main component for independent titles becomes trying to get published by said influencers and influencer ran companies? Are we going to pigeonhole them to specific genres that will appeal to said streamers' audience or streamers themselves? Will I find anything else interesting to say here? Yes, because for all these people that have these publishers now being their benefactors, there are still just as many, if not 5 times, 10 times, 20 times as many indies out there that never see the light of day. They don't get the credit deserved. They don't get to spotlight their own projects. And this is why I'm gonna mention Yellow Taxi Goes Room. This is a really good platformer. You thought I was gonna be talking about Animal Well with this title. Well, too bad. We're 19 minutes into this, and now I'm gonna talk about Yellow Taxi Goes Room. It's basically Super Mario Odyssey, but you're a wind-up toy taxi that can't jump in a very traditional way. And all the levels are like Super Mario Odyssey, except for the fact that you're in a hub area, but then you go into new areas after collecting a certain amount of gears, which gears are basically moons from Odyssey. And you do a bunch of random objectives and secret minigames within each of the levels. And there's a bunch of platforming, and it's really humorous. And the humor just sits. The humor sits right with me, and it hits. It doesn't always hit, but it sits right with me. Does that make sense? I'm making sense for myself. I think that's what matters here.
you should play Yellow Taxi Go Through. But also, if you haven't played Animal Well, just Steam Family shared Animal Well with somebody that you know. But buy Yellow Taxi Go Through because I guarantee you ain't nobody playing that shit right now. So go play it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a good 3D platform, and also it's got a guy named Morio in it. Like, I mean, what more do you want? Morio 2? Wario? Anton Blast?